Hello, my loves, and welcome to Strange Playgrounds. Now, it's been an odd period of late. It really, really has. I mean, we've had Pride here in the UK, which has been great. Sadly, I haven't really been able to attend most of the celebrations. Pride here is really good. Up the road, we've got Birmingham, which is one of the biggest cities in the UK, and Pride there is huge. There's an entire gay quarter in Birmingham, and there's lots of venues, but that basically expands during Pride and takes over the entire city, and the streets are just thronged with celebrations, and it's great fun. It's really, really cool. But owing to one thing or another, I just haven't been able to attend, which is a real shame because I do feel that Pride this year is more important than ever, owing to the wave of transphobia that's sweeping the UK, but also the more generalized queer phobia that it is bringing with it. I mean, anyone with any sense of scope or scale can see that it's the wedge issue, right? It is being used as the means to kick open the door and attack all of us. It's as those of us who have been watching it generate from the very beginning have known from since the very beginning. And as I've said many times before, I know there are a handful of gay people who are actually on the side of the transphobes, and they are real. They are problems. They are real problems. They put me in mind of the same kinds of people who like the queer conservatives in this country. It's the most bizarre thing. It is the most bizarre thing. What they don't seem to understand is it doesn't matter how much they attempt to accommodate those who consider themselves to be our enemies. We are all common queers in their eyes. We're all common filth. You can play up to them as much as you like. It's not going to work. It is not going to work. When this particular issue runs out of steam or they've done all they can, they will turn to another scapegoat because that's the psychology behind it. That's what they need. It's always the way when there is a particular wave of prejudice or bigotry, particularly in this country, it comes in waves, it seems, and it's hard to define until you reach a particular age, because after you reach a particular age you see the patterns of it. You see it happening again and again and again and again. So in the 1980s and early 90s, when I was a kid, it was gay people, and then it quickly shifted into being a conversation more about immigrants and refugees. Then after 9/11 it became Muslims. Then it quickly shifted back to refugees and immigrants again. Then it became very, very quickly trans people. Now trans people are the scapegoat du jour. There are particular people and forces in our society that require scapegoats in order to maintain their sense of identity. They don't have anything else. To maintain impetus and significance, they don't actually have anything else. That's the truth of the matter. Because when you start to look at their purported ideas and their purported ideologies, they crumble into little bits. There's nothing there. I mean, your TERFs and your GCs, your transphobic crowd, they love to apprehend or misapprehend the language of feminism, and it's self-evidently bullshit. It's self-evidently bullshit. None of them, and I mean not one of them, have read the original feminists. When you look at I mean, the stuff that J.K. Rowling has written is asinine. It's asinine. I would encourage you to go and read the articles and the essays that she's written on this matter, just so you can understand for yourself how self-contradictory, how neurotic and absurd their positions are. Because I'm telling you, the stuff that J.K. Rowling has written and has had published in very, very big platforms, so much for being cancelled, right? Is asinine. I've never read it's Jordan Peterson levels of waffle, self-justification, internally contradictory as well. Internally contradictory. Don't take my word for it. Don't do what these people want you to do and just accept what they have to say. Go and read it for yourselves. Go forth and do so. But whilst you're doing so, please go and read some of the original feminists. Go and read up on the first and second and third and fourth wave feminists. Go and read someone like Helen C. Zhu, for example. Go and read Ursula K. Le Guin. Go and read these people who, Margaret Atwood, obviously. Go and read the people who laid the groundwork, and you will realize that what Rowling and her lot are doing has fuck all to do with feminism. And again, it's very clear when you look at who they're gaining support from, the people who are flocking to their side. It's people like Matt Walsh, people like Ben Shapiro, people like Vladimir Putin, for fuck's sake. It should give you pause. It should give you pause when that starts to happen, when you start to attract these kinds of people, when you've got actual fascists and Nazis, self-defined by the way, turning up to turf rallies and piping up in support of these of gender critical people, and also when you've got gender critical people like Rowling retweeting and supporting people like Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh, who is an avowed anti feminist, who has written long screeds and given long interviews about where he talks about how women should be sex slaves and broodmares and nothing more. Where how we need to roll back feminism and women's rights. Women should be treated basically as cattle and nothing else. Much feminist, JK, much feminist. Also, one of the other reasons they're not sincerely feminist, they're just using the language of it in order to legitimize their bigotry, um, is that they stay remarkably silent when women's rights are actually under attack. Like, for example, women's medical rights, which are currently under assault in the US and increasingly here in the UK, as always happens. When something happens in the US, you can guarantee those similar forces here in the UK, i.e., the right, are going to do exactly, they're going to try and emulate it. And that's exactly what we've got. That's exactly what we've got. Those same forces that wanted abortion to be banned and access to basic feminine medical care in the US are now doing the same thing here in the UK. It's not going to stand, by the way. If abortion became illegal here in the UK, there would be fucking riots up and down the country. Things would be burned. But you look at the gender critical crowd, these people who proclaim to talk on behalf of women everywhere, who proclaim to be the arch feminists, not peep, not a whisper. The reason being, they know who their allies are. They know who their allies are, and they're terrified of alienating them by talking up in support of actual women's rights. No, 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 can't have that. The only thing that matters is the common enemy. That's all that matters. And you had J.K. Rowling tweeting overtly recently. She said that trans people and the trans movement, whatever the fuck that is, are the greatest threat to women in her time. So it's not these assaults from rich white old men in the US who have banned abortion and also access to all of the range of female medical care that comes with that. It's not that. No, 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 no. It's not that. It's not the problems you have in conservative quarters, certain like subcultures in the US, like the Mormons, for example, or the Jehovah's Witnesses, or the fundamentalist sects in the US, or the Mormons, where you've got entrenched patriarchy and misogyny, where women are treated appallingly. It's not that. No, 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 no. And it's not the right wing fascists that she's cozying up to, and that all of her ilk are cozying up to and getting support from, who want women reduced to the levels of sex slaves and broodmares. No, 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 no. It's queer people. It's trans people. Less than 1% of the population here in the UK and in the US. But it's them, right? They're the greatest threats. Up until this movement, there was no hint of this. There are countries out there that already have gender recognition on their in their laws. So basically, people can define in terms of gender however they wish. And what do you find in those countries? Do you find that there is sort of mass invasion of women's spaces? Do you find that trans people are these perverted sort of covert rapists, which is how these fuckers always, always, always try to tar trans people. No, you don't. You don't find that. In fact, if you go and bother to fucking look, you find that most of the countries that have these kinds of laws tend to have lower instances of things like rape, STDs, sexual abuse. It's interesting, isn't it? Now, correlation is not causation, but it is interesting. It is fascinating that that is the situation, is it not? So we know it's the emperor's new clothes. When you bother to go and look, you can see that they are talking bullshit. And increasingly, when you see them interviewed, it's amazing watching them being interviewed because they have nothing. They have no data. They have no actual studies. They have no actual even examples they can point to. All they do is point to the most extreme examples, just like, by the way, the anti-gay people did in the 80s and the 90s. So you would get like a child molester that abused children of the same sex, and suddenly it would be, oh, this is the result of allowing gay people rights and whatnot. No, this is exactly the same. They will point to there are always in every demographic abusers, by the way, because sadly that's where we are at the moment as human beings in every demographic. Do you want to look? I mean, you could actually look at the incidence of child abuse within families, for example, from male parental figures upon female children. And suddenly, by their logic, if you were going to apply their logic rationally and equally, then fathers and uncles should be exiled from the family unit. If we are following their logic and applying it equally, then fathers, uncles, males in general should be excised from the family unit. I work in social care. We have to study abuse, it's part of what we do. And the vast majority of child abuse occurs within family units. The vast, 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 vast majority. And the vast majority is, I'm sad to say, men who actively identify as straight and cisgender assaulting girls. That is the vast, vast, vast majority, and it has been forever. If you bother to go and look at the actual statistics, the actual information that's readily available here in the UK, that has been the case forever. So, if we're going to follow the logic, then should technically be no such thing as fathers in this culture, right? If we're going to follow their logic. But of course, they don't do that. They don't do that. They don't even consider that because they don't have any consistency. They don't have any real basis for their ideology. It's a nonsense. Ultimately, what you've got in the gender critical movement is some very damaged. First, you've got lots of different types of people. First of all, you've got the ones like Rowling, who Rowling is phenomenally damaged from what I can see. Phenomenally damaged. I think, amateur psychologist. I think that her experience with her abusive ex-husband did a real number on her, and it has damaged her perception such that when she's seeing trans women, she is immediately categorizing them as predatory men, which is simply not the case. I mean, as I've said, statistically, it's not the case. Just go and look for yourselves. Look at the crime statistics. They are far more likely to be the victims of abuse and violent crime than the perpetrators of it. Far more likely. And as a result, that's where this is coming from. It's that fundamental problem in her mind, and it's really sad. It's really sad to see. Um, the lack of perspective, the lack of consistency, the lack of scope. And the funny thing is that our enemies, which she's cozying up to, by the way, alongside a lot of the prominent gender criticals, they are they're clapping their hands and laughing all the way because what they're seeing are two demographics that they loathe: women and trans people, queer people, at one another's throats when they should be allies. They are natural allies, as many, 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 many feminists have determined. I mean, what part of the project of certainly the first and second wave feminists was liberating women from the restrictions of their biology, of their anatomy. So allowing women to operate um, outside of the narratives of motherhood, for example, of wifedom, of sisterhood, of being the objects of a patriarchal system. That was part of that's an explicit part of their project. And who really exemplifies that better than trans men and trans women, right? People who are operating in contrast to what the narratives prescribe for them from birth. There are natural allies here, natural allies, just as women find natural allies in the gay community, right? Because what a lot of those anti-trans gay people don't get, particularly gay men, it seems to me, is that we challenge gender prescriptions too. We always have. It's just that as time has gone on and as a certain degree of cultural acceptance has occurred, we've forgotten that. We've somehow forgotten that because that was what was aimed at us. That was one of the core criticisms aimed at us by our enemies back in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. The fact that we challenge those prescriptions and those narratives by our very natures, which we do, by the way. We do. We are not, I mean, we have an entire range of operation within being gay men. Um, but one thing we absolutely do is challenge traditional and patriarchal prescriptions of what gender is. Absolutely. It's why effeminate, what are called effeminate gay men tend to get a lot of stick, both from within and without our communities. Disgustingly, they actually get attacked more than those of us who pass, those of us who are not overtly effeminate, as it were, which I'm not, by the way. I often, it works the other way around as well, which is really bizarre. One of the things I often get is when, if it comes up in conversation, if I meet someone new and we're talking about partners or about, oh, have you, someone will ask, oh, have you got a partner, a girlfriend? I was like, ah, no, it would be a boyfriend for me, actually. And what I get often is this look as though that's not right. It's always from straight people, by the way, because it is going to be from straight people, and it's often from straight people of particular generations as well. That's also true. Oh, you're not, are you? And it's like, well, yeah, what do you want? Do you want video evidence? I'm sure there's some of that knocking about somewhere in the world, but do you want video evidence of the fact? Because I don't live up to a particular idea of what gay people are supposed to be, right? Of what gay men are supposed to be. It's really very peculiar. And effeminate gay men who are not sort of like conforming to prescriptions of masculinity, they get it both ways. They get it coming and going. So, on the one hand, like heteronormative culture prescribes their particular state of being through its media. Often, if you get like gay characters in soap operas here in the UK, they are that character. They are a stereotype of being an effeminate gay man. The reason being it makes us identifiable, right? And it places certain parameters upon us. However, it also hates them for that. It hates them for that because they, like trans men, are quote unquote intruding on feminine spaces, and from a certain perspective are diluting or undermining what it means to be masculine, whatever the fuck that even means. I mean, any student of history in this country, by the way, if you look back further than, say, the Victorian era, then notions of masculinity mean fuck all. They're completely arbitrary. There was a time when men would routinely wear the most elaborate costumes, wigs, and makeup when they were extremely fey and foppish, and that was the standard. That was what men were, as it were. It's arbitrary and it's absurd. But yeah, like men who are not conforming to a particular prescription of masculinity really get some stick. And they also get it from within queer culture as well a lot of the time, which is really upsetting. That is really upsetting. You see them getting stick because people will say, oh, they're conforming to a stereotype or they are perpetuating a stereotype or whatever, but they exist and they exist as they are. It doesn't matter whether straight culture has taken that stereotype or that particular type of person and created a stereotype out of it. That's straight culture's business, and that's a whole thing to tackle in and of itself. It's not the fault of the subject, it's not the fault of these men in question. I mean, the other thing, of course, is that what about straight effeminate men? What about straight men who don't conform to the prescriptions of masculinity? Hmm? What about them? I mean, I remember when I was a kid, we had family friends, right? And I used to pal around with their daughters a lot. We were really good friends. The dynamic of the mother and the father was totally inverse of what you'd expect from a classic straight relationship. The woman, the mother, was extremely big, very strong, very loud, brash, classically, traditionally, patriarchally masculine, whereas the father was quiet, skinny, pale, demurring, very, very, very sort of recessed and in the shadows, very much the less dominant personality and very much not conforming to patriarchal prescriptions of masculinity. What about people like that? Hmm? What? Does that not count because they happen to be operating in a straight relationship? It's interesting, isn't it? What you find is these absurd obsessions, these absurd parameters of what it means to be male or female or masculine or feminine, they are largely arbitrary. And that is also true, by the way. The other thing the gender criticals will do, and conservatives in general, is that they will rely upon their high school level education of biology and anatomy, and they will rely upon their own ignorance as an argument. So they will not dare venture further into those arenas or read further into those arenas because they know if they do, it obliterates their positions. They will say something like, oh, sex is real. And it's like, well, yeah, it is, but it's not what you think it is. It's not what you assert it is. It's a spectrum. Like most states of being in humanity, it's a spectrum. I'm not a biologist. I'm not an anatomist. I'm not a specialist in this arena. But I've read fucking books. I've read books beyond high school, beyond the bad 1970s books of biology and anatomy that we had in high school. So I know a little bit more about this. In pathology, it's well known that trans people exist. You know why? Do you know why that is? There's some great videos on YouTube, interviews with pathologists where they talk about this. And there are certain structures in brains that are very particular to male and female. They are differently shaped and they produce different hormones or different levels of hormones in men than they do women, right? What you find in trans women, for example, is that their brain structures significantly conform more to what we understand of as female brains than male brains. And the same is also true of trans women when it comes to male brains. Yeah? I mean, I utterly refute reducing this to biological essentialism. I really do, which is what they're trying to do because they think they've got a win there. They think they've got a win when they reduce things down to biological essentialism. But even there, they're fucked. They are absolutely fucked if you understand anything about this beyond a high school level. But they will not, even when you point this out, even when you give them the books and the papers and the articles, refer them to the specialists who will be able to tell them about this, they will just no, 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 no. They'll just the walls will come down and they will divert, they will dissemble because they know on some level it is utterly devastating to their arguments. There are conditions. There are very peculiar, not as peculiar as you would think conditions whereby a girl, for example, who reaches the age of say 9 or 10 and doesn't have her first period, doesn't start her menstrual cycles. Okay, fine, nothing to worry about. Some girls start later, some girls start earlier, right? Then she reaches 13 and she still hasn't had a single period. Okay, that might be a little concerning. Anatomically, in her ways, in the way she is, completely female, right? Completely identifiably female. Reaches 15 and 16 and still hasn't had a period. And then it starts to become medically concerning, right? So her parents take her to the doctors, and the doctor examines her, gives her a battery of tests, blood tests, and what they find is that this girl has male sexual organs, has testes, but they are internal. They are internal and they are sort of in the stomach cavity, and they are producing extreme amounts of testosterone as male sexual organs do during puberty. Um, that is a far more common condition than most people think. Most people think. Intersex people, a lot more of them than you would most people would realize. Then there are conditions whereby, because of hormonal imbalances, it's not uncommon for teenage boys to start to grow breasts. And most of the time, the body kind of reverts that, but not always. Not always. Sex is a spectrum, just as gender is. So anatomically, they're kind of fucked as well. Anatomically, they're kind of fucked. They love to bring things down to the levels of chromosomes. Unfortunately, they're wrong there too. They're absolutely wrong there. I'm not going to go into it because, I'm not an anatomist, I'm not a biologist, I'm not a geneticist, I'm not the authority. Do what they don't want you to do. Go and look it up. Go and look it up. It is not always the case that a certain set of chromosomes or people who exhibit having a certain set of chromosomes are absolutely this way or that way. It's just not that simple. As I say, their understanding is high school, and they will cleave to that. They will cleave to it rather than accept the reality. Because that reality, in the same way that sexuality is a spectrum, right? Sexuality is a spectrum, and it always has been. It always has been. The truth is, even the language we use to talk about sexuality isn't that it isn't that useful, or it rather isn't that comprehensive. It's useful on a sort of political and social level. I identify as gay because I am primarily attracted to men, romantically and sexually attracted to men. However, that's not to say I would deny, if I found a woman absolutely like life-changingly beautiful and attractive and just arousing and romantically interesting, that I wouldn't pursue that. It doesn't mean that at all. Most of us, most gay people have their exceptions, most straight people have their exceptions too, whether they like to admit it or not. We operate on a spectrum, and sexually speaking, I mean, every study ever done, if you bother to go and look at them, every study into human sexuality, not just like a few over here, a few over there. No, there's no contest here. There's very little in the way of ambiguity. We are just sexual creatures, in the same way that bonobos are. We're very like bonobos. Were it not for the parameters of certain hideous traditions and ideologies, we'd probably be using sex to say hello. That's just the way we are. You know how bonobos are known to give one another like oral sex as ways of just greeting. That's probably how we would be, to be perfectly honest. It's an interesting thing. The politics of our sexuality has been so damaged by these ancient traditions that turn us against ourselves, our most essential emotions and drives, our internal identities. Um, but now they are starting to collapse. People are afraid. People are afraid of the shifts and the changes that will come as a result, because these things have been so monolithic for so long. And what we don't understand is we're at the beginning of that process. Historically, we're kind of at the beginning of that process. We're nowhere near the end product yet. Or, I mean, even if there is such a thing, even if there is such a thing as sort of like an ideal end state, which I don't believe there is myself, We are at the beginning of that. So these conflicts where for every new set of freedoms we get, there's always going to be these quarters that rise up in extreme opposition because they just can't handle it. They can't allow it, or they feel excluded by it, or whatever. That sadly seems to always happen. But you know what? Here's the other thing: the genie's out of the bottle. Genie's out of the bottle, loves. It's never going back in. It is never, ever, ever going back in. You can do what you, yeah, they could succeed. They could initiate a new holocaust of queer people. They could wipe us all off the face of the earth tomorrow. They could wipe us all off the face of the earth tomorrow, and they still wouldn't win. Do you know why? Because there would be queer little babies and queer little kids gestating away, with nestled safely in those straight wombs or in those straight family structures, ready to emerge again as a new generation of queer people. You can't stop queerness. It's like trying to stop humanity. It's absurd. It is what we are. Allowing for this other range of identities and using those identities as a bridge to undo the evils of tradition is the best way forward for all of us. It's the best way forward for all of us. It undoes neurosis, it undoes patriarchy, which fucks us all over. Straight, queer, cisgender, trans, whatever. It fucks us all over. It doesn't matter who you are or what you are. Those traditions are toxic to us. And we are the means of overcoming them. We are the expression of that. And I don't think it's ever going to stop now. I really don't. We've had a taste of freedom, my loves. All of us have. And yeah, it doesn't really matter about these conservative forces who think. I mean, what I love about them is they also really think they're on the right side of history. They genuinely think that. And, well, they're not. It's as simple as that. It's not a matter of perspective or opinion. They're not. They are the forces of old conservatism. That's the irony of the turf brigade, of the GC lot. They love to talk about feminism, when in fact what they are old school misogynist conservatives. Scratch the surface and you find that. You absolutely find that. A lot of them are already talking about expanding the remits of the latest attempt by our government to suppress teaching of about queer people and queer relationships in schools, for example. They want to extend what they call the banning of what they call gender ideology. By the way, where is this ideology? Where's it written down? This is gender ideology is what our opponents use when they have no argument, because it's the same tactic that was used in the 2010s when gay marriage was on the ballot in the US, and they called us, it was the gay agenda, right? I remember saying at the time, where's my leaflet? Where's my booklet that tells me about this agenda? Because I haven't had it. Where's it written down? What company, institution, church is prescribing it? And why is it the be all and end all when it comes to what gay people want? The same is true here when they use gender ideology. There's no such thing. There is literally no such thing. It is not the case, as they would have it, that there is some sinister cabal of academics and doctors and surgeons and trans people who bafflingly are all in on this weird conspiracy theory together to trans the nation's children or whatever, or to invade women's spaces en masse, That's just garbage. It is no better than a conspiracy theory. It is Roswell. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. It's Skinwalker Ranch. It's all this bullshit. Um, there's no basis for it. Where is it? What are its tenets? Where's it written down? Where can I find a copy? Because I haven't seen it myself, and I don't know anyone who has ever seen it, trans or otherwise. That's the fun of it. That's the funny thing. There's no ideology. There's no ideology here other than a a reaction of repulsion towards what is overt scapegoating and bigotry. And it's evident. It's the emperor's new clothes at this point. It is evident for the reasons I pointed out already. Um, yeah. It's a fascinating time to be queer, I can tell you. Frightening, very, very frightening for queer people across the spectrum, across the board. Because as a result of Rowling and her lot, and other forces as well, anti-queer violence in the UK has risen by about 500% since 2016, and anti-trans violence by over 1,000%. So well done, guys. Good work there, well done. And ironically, the same people who are committing violence against trans people do tend to be the same people who commit violence against women. What a surprise! What a surprise, eh? What a massive surprise. Not really. Not really, is it? Let's be honest. Let's be honest. Um, but yeah, it's the Emperor's New Clothes. As I love to point out on this podcast, one of my favorite fairy tales. If there was a narrative for the state of our times, it would be that. It would be the Emperor's New Clothes. It really, really would. Um, but yeah, as I've said throughout this episode, don't take my word for it. Please go and research these issues. Do exactly what they don't want you to do. Go and research these issues. Go and look at the crime statistics. Go and look at those countries that allow for free gender recognition, free and open gender recognition. Go and look, and you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised.